you're never going to come across your dad's old Roland Cloud subscription.
Yes, that is true.
And probably like cracked Fruity Loops is the folk instrument of the 21st century.
This episode of Why We Bleep is a conversation with Morgan of Wrong. Morgan is entirely wrong. That would be the name of a Eurorack modular synth company, and Morgan is a brilliant example of a lesser spotted, independent Eurorack maker from a cool city. Morgan is Australian and he is from Melbourne. And in this conversation, we talk about the whole story of how he became a tiny little indie maker making extremely cool, unique, one-of-a-kind modules with loads of interesting aspects. Morgan's big thing is stereo. Yes, we've ignored it a great deal with our little patch cables in mono, but he is here to tell you that you've been missing out. And so we talk about the whole story, how he got started at being in bands, and we just generally nerd out about the magic of stereo. And he tells me, or at least attempts to tell me, and as much as it is like explaining a magic trick to a dog, how mid-side actually works. Surprising facts about the little mono speakers that we have. We talk about repairing gear, because Morgan did, about how through-hole parts may not exist in 40 years, and build quality in general. Like, what is the most expensive part of making synths? Like, what is the worst part of making products? So this is a good, solid, nerdy chat with a completely independent Eurorack maker about the whole story. And so the conversation begins after these important messages. Why We Bleep is sponsored by Signal Sounds. It's that time of year where the weather comes in, and I like to leave decent society behind and indulge my difficult noise tendencies. I've bought another plastic folding table, and I'm going to throw a load of boxes on it and make square waves at 110 decibels until blood runs freely from my eyeballs. So I moused on down to signalsounds.com and have 5 pieces of sonic mayhem wending their wonderful way to me as I speak. My centerpiece is the Clank Uranograph. It looks a bit like a Suzuki Omnichord made by the Borg and is a West Coast phase-distorting looping wonder panel capable of such beauty and savagery. To this I shall add the Torso S4. Through its immense granular power, I can take the sound of amorous foxes and turn them into the despicable bells, tolling the end of time. For effects, it's got to be the Vongon Solar Phase. It's a stereo drive processor with detune that carries your sound across a sunlit landscape of phase and tone, which I think is code for it makes things sound like they've been singed by the devil's breath. And as my control hub, I have to have the A to V Faderpunk. It's 16 sliders, spitting out any combination of LFOs, envelopes, sequencers, Turing machine-style loopers. For all shall tremble as I command my CV inputs with despicable power. And finally, it's the T.E. Riddiman Ting, in order to dub siren the ever-loving Mother Hubbard over my sonic lament and hoot my despair into the microphone, for all shall know the nature of my ruin. I think it's going to be a really wonderful afternoon at the village hall. So if you'd like to receive a letter of profound disappointment from the local parish, visit signalsounds.com. That's signalsounds.com. Why We Bleep is also sponsored by Chunky Studio Furniture. Are you looking for the perfect studio desk, but none online are quite right? Well, if you want custom chunky handmade wooden furniture that will majestically cradle your quite insane list of gear purchases, then Chunky Studio Furniture could be the answer. Guy at Chunky Studio Furniture uses thick, beautiful, reclaimed wood to create organic, vintage-looking studio tables and racking that can be customized to order. You can get chunky wooden angled 19-inch racks to cradle your highly questionable collection of 90s rack mount synths. You know, the ones you absolutely will be using in that next track eventually. You could get a studio desk with cutouts that specifically fit an SSL UC1, for example, with angled equipment racks, and a cupboard to hide away that noisy PC. And you could get a beautiful wooden trolley rack with precisely enough U to house your irrational collection of vintage compressors. If you want it, Chunky Studio Furniture can build it. So head over to chunkystudiofurniture.co.uk to get inspiration, get a quote, and put some chunky soul into your studio. Because once you've made a beautiful home for your gear, you can buy some more. Visit chunkystudiofurniture.co.uk. And now, on with the show.
You're one of these manufacturers who is making it work, it seems. And there's a whole sort of story there, I think, because my sort of outsider's perspective is just that it seems, having a small business in this weird little niche feels hard to me. It feels like a hard thing. But I suppose before that, it would be interesting to understand where you come from. Where did you grow up, and how do you first come into the weird world of electronic music?
I was born and grew up in Melbourne, Australia, which has a pretty good music scene. I was into going to gigs, but guitar-y kind of, punk rocky kind of gigs. A friend of mine had a friend from uni who started a band, and I lived in a share house with one of the people in the band. They had a gig coming up, and they were a synth band. Basically, it's in the early 2000s when synth bands weren't really a thing. They were playing at a rock and roll venue, and the venue only had 2 DIs, so they hired a little mixer from a PA hire company so that they could submix everything, and they didn't know how to use it. And they're like, "Hey, Morgan, do you reckon you can figure out how to use this?" And I'm like, "Okay."
Had you had any experience? Why were they picking on you for this?
Oh, I think just because I'm generally nerdy, I did figure it out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And then I was in the band.
Wait, as a keyboardist or as a
guy who sat on the side of the stage with the mixing desk to begin with, and they had backing tracks on a mini disc, and so I was queuing up the backing tracks and stuff, and then I started playing around with effects and running stuff through filters and playing around doing a very poor version of dub mixing
during shows as well. Or is this just oh, interesting? Well, that's quite cool that they were up for that.
Well, I mean, it was people who didn't know anything about being in bands. I ended up being a lot more involved in the music scene and live music, and we were all so incredibly clueless. It is kind of, it's quite funny in retrospect.
In what way?
I mean, none of us had ever been in a band before. I include myself, but I wasn't really doing very much in that band for the first couple of years. The main guy was writing the songs with a cracked copy of Fruity Loops. And I think it was a Juno 6 and a Korg Poly 800 with a Korg EA1 Velcroed to the top of it and connected with MIDI, and then running into the audio input on that. And then an old Yamaha YC45 70s organ.
Right.
And a mini disc player, which eventually got upgraded to an MPC. And so then I was, I had an instrument rather than just a mixing desk. But Milo was just writing the songs in Fruity Loops and then exporting them out and then putting them on a CD and then putting the CD in via analog into the mini disc player, and all of these terrible things that you would never do because terrible sound quality and stuff.
I mean, but I suppose if it's the punk rock thing, that feels legit to me. That feels why would you do it any other way? Why do it the proper way?
Well, we didn't even know what the proper way was. We were just oh yeah, we can do that. I remember one time we had to do a remix for somebody and we didn't know how to do remixes, so we just did a cover version of it basically. And and burnt a CD of it, and we were driving over to their house to give them the CD master of our remix, and it got stuck in the CD player in the car because it had one of the stick-on labels on the CD.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we were very clueless.
You never got it out.
I think eventually Dan may have pulled the whole, CD player out of the car to get it out or something.
Was there a drummer, or were you just was it a synth? It was a synth punk band, synth pop?
It was, it sounded like Devo, Telex kind of.
Oh, great.
That kind of vibe. Yeah, Milo had a TR-505, But it was mostly just backing tracks, like drums coming out of Fruity Loops.
Had you learned a musical instrument? Were you pushed into music in any way, shape, or form by your folks?
I tried to learn trumpet for a little while, but then I think it was too annoying practicing in the house. And I tried to learn guitar, but my grade 5 teacher was our guitar teacher, and she also didn't know how to play guitar. So
that's definitely going to be, that's a real barrier to entry. I also feel that formalized learning for certain things like guitar, I was talking to someone about this yesterday, how I just think formalized learning for a lot of instruments is just kind of a bit of a buzzkill if you're a kid. Like, there must be a way. What's the sort of the Montessori sort of way of learning a guitar that allows you to actually enjoy yourself? I only say this as someone who also tried to learn the piano, and it's just grades and formalized practice. And yes, you need those things, and you probably do need some structure, but it just has to be fun.
I reckon just like leave musical instruments around where kids can fiddle with them if they want, especially synths, because you can do some cool stuff with synths without having to know anything.
I am literally in this position now where I have toddlers, and they're picking up. We've got a ukulele. They pick it up and they strum it. My son's very sweet. He has it up here. He plays it like that, I think. So he's like very Beatles, very high. And then, but yeah, I'm like, I've got a chord monotribe. I'm going to just put batteries in it and just leave it, put it on the side, and just sort of keep going to it. Because my studio's here at the end of the garden, and basically they can't come in and play. They're welcome to. But yeah, you need to just basically osmosis it. So you had guitar and trumpet. What about synths? When, obviously you've got a mixer that you had access to, but you were not presumably a synth guy.
The first synth that I ever played with was the guy from the band's Juno 6, which they used to do band practice at our share house. And so it was just sitting on the floor, and I'd be like, what does VCF mean? And then it's like, oh, if you turn on the ARP button and then play with this, it sounds cool.
It sounds like synth pop, yeah.
Yeah.
It is the most triumphant synth. I have a 60, and it's just the best. Did you feel in your heart a kind of stirring, or is this more just like, oh, okay?
I've always been really, into music, and I don't know. I never kind of thought I could play it because, I didn't get really good at guitar in the 8 weeks or whatever that I spent trying to learn it. I kind of just fell into it because of the people I was friends with, which was handy. And and then I guess you kind of learned that you don't really need to know what you're doing as long as people think it's cool.
Yes. And so where do you actually get to a point where you own a synth?
I think the first thing I bought an SP202 with the idea of putting the backing tracks on it, but then it's only got about 15 seconds of memory or something, so that didn't really work. I think the first actual synth I bought was the Evolver, like the original tabletop Evolver.
Yeah, the blue one.
Yeah.
I had that synth as well.
Yeah, it's a great synth. It has some weird quirks, but yeah.
Well, architecturally, what is it like? Or, what did you find it good for?
I really liked the fact that if you wanted it to be an effects box, then it could be. Because this is still at the point where I'm in my job in the band is hitting play on the MPC and just correcting people's levels and being like the interpreter talking to the sound engineers at the gigs. I was running sequences out of it, but then for some things where I wanted to just do like a filter sweep on white noise, I think I had samples coming out of the MPC, and then you can make a patch where you have the oscillators turned off and you're just going through the filter and then into the delay part.
Yeah.
But the stereo stuff was really cool because you had basically two parallel signal paths with an analog oscillator and a digital oscillator and then an analog filter, and you could control the width of them. So you could make it one big mono thing, or you could keep it stereo. Because I was used to using that, that's why I started making modules. Because when I started modular, I wanted to work in stereo still, but there was no stereo modules. And so I designed the mid-side module so that I could kind of do that a little bit without having to buy two of everything.
Interesting. When did you first get into modular then? Where do we get the kind of from band to someone? Because that you can't just make something. Like you have to surely. How do you learn it?
So while I was in the band, I went to sound engineering school because I was kind of doing that already, and so then I did that, and then I started working as a sound engineer. But at the same time, I started working at a university doing kind of sound engineering stuff as part of an architecture department.
Oh, wow.
That did these.
What does that entail?
Well, they did like lots of multi-channel sound concerts and stuff. It was like sound art people kind of sneaking their way in via the architecture department, basically. Yeah, there's an organization called Liquid Architecture from Melbourne, and they do sound art stuff. And I think that liquid architecture is a reference to a quote that architecture is like frozen music or something. I can't remember.
It was an interesting thought. When you were, but I just trying to understand what sorts of projects people were doing. What was the kind of like vibe?
They spent a lot of time working on a max patch to do multi-channel concerts. Yeah, we did like a 48-channel concert in like an old like meat market.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And yeah, like, so I was doing things like I made these speaker
not
trees.
Like, meat, but I mean like just like a large echoey space, right? Like a reverberant, interesting sounding room.
Yeah. And so the people were kind of, I think some of them had worked with Stockhausen.
Wow.
So they were kind of into that whole, sound arty thing and doing interesting stuff like that. So yeah, I made these trees they had little tweeters on them.
Perfect.
And so then you could, turn up a fader and light would go to all the trees that were around the audience. And we had speakers that were at the back of the room firing up into the ceiling. So it was like your reverb send.
Nuts.
Yeah.
What sound were they putting in though into that?
I mean, there was a bunch of stuff. There was some of the Stockhausen stuff that they got the original like 8-channel tapes from the Stockhausen Institute, and they were doing like diffusion concerts of that. Wow. And then there was a live percussionist that was working with some other pre-recorded stuff, and mostly playback, but
I mean, it's still, but it's still really fast. That's the most fascinating aspect. It's just putting it into a real space. I've been obsessing a bit about organs, and an organ is an example of kind of you cannot separate the space from the instrument. The space is the instrument, is the space is the instrument. And it's just like amazing, magical extra things can presumably happen when you pipe sound into the real world.
Yeah, well, we did, when I was there, one of the concerts was in the Melbourne Town Hall organ, which is, I think, the largest organ in the Southern Hemisphere.
Really?
And it's like the organ, you go inside it. I was hanging mics up inside it, and it's like 2 stories high. There's ladders inside it. It's crazy.
Yeah. To do what though? Like to mic it or to play sound into it?
To mic it up, and then we were diffusing it around the space as well.
So you were like propagating it further. Yeah, nuts.
It's one of those MIDI ones as well.
Yes.
And a guy that I know is now working for the council, and they're getting some really good electronic artists to do like residencies where they can just go and play on the organ however long they want, and then at the end of it they'll organize a concert and record it and then release that. And there's some really cool stuff that's come out from that.
Where do I effing sign? I want to come and play. This is what I've been thinking about, is just like, how do you get time on the dang thing? There's like this Maxime Denunc guy. There's some other artists that I've seen, people have sent me links to, that are doing kind of organ music. But it's this simple question of just like where you make music for a very esoteric and specific system that you do not have at home. How do you write the music? How do you need some unfettered time to experiment and play, right? Like we do if we leave synths around our house for our kids. So you're doing sound engineering. I suppose then the question is, do we know where synths enter the chat in terms of, and your electronics knowledge? Was it necessary that you learn that to a degree for your job, or was it just something that came as a result of it?
When I was working at the university, I kind of was eavesdropping on someone's conversation who was doing a postgrad in our department. They wanted a physical thing that could interface with the computer and do certain things. And I'd been kind of, soldering stuff, and I knew some basic electronics and played with Arduinos and stuff. And I was like, oh, I reckon I can probably make that work. So then I ended up I moved to the industrial design department, and I was kind of working with them and just sort of helping people make their prototypes actually work, because industrial designers love being like, it's a box and it does this, and that's my assignment. And I'm like, okay, let's make it so the lights can flash on and off and stuff.
That seems like a real trial by fire, though. Like, to go from just tinkering for presumably fun, had you just been like, oh, I'll try some of this stuff just because it seems like a lark, or did you have any kind of grand ideas or plans for it?
No, not really. I just like fiddling with stuff. I was like a kid who took everything to pieces and put it back together to see how it worked, kind of thing. And yeah, when I was working at that university, at one point I organized a meeting with my boss, and I sat down and I was like, I don't know how to do any of this stuff. Like, you ask me to do something and I just Google it, and then I figure out, like, I want to let you know so that you don't find out and then get mad at me. And he was like, no, that's fine. That's how you do things. And I was like, oh, okay.
Absolutely damn right. I mean, like, yeah, I think it's very cool that you're like, I just want to put my hand up and just let you know that I'm a fraud. I'm kind of just making this up as I go along. Oh, damn it. That's how life works. We're all just making,
Yeah, I didn't want to, get found out in an embarrassing way.
You completely. And there's nothing wrong with not knowing, I suppose if the person doesn't know, then your role is a kind of a sort of facilitator where you both learn and you both work it out, and you've got someone to bounce ideas off of, and you can both learn how to do it. And so do you feel that you did get this kind of, you got like a kind of on-the-job honorary degree in electronics, it seems, by being paid to basically work it out as you went along?
Well, I did for a bit, but then I ended up going and studying electronics.
Okay.
Doing an engineering degree. And then I learned a lot about what I didn't really know.
You didn't know.
Yeah. And I also learned a lot about maths, so much maths that I've not needed ever.
Do you mean as in you've not needed synths, or is it maths you did need?
I don't think, no, because I've used some of it. I've used some formulas to make wavetables and stuff, but I feel like engineering, it's like making teenagers do really hard maths, and if they can do the really hard maths, then you get a job at the end of it.
Okay.
But that has nothing to do with maths.
Okay. It's like a sort of a filter designed to just say, like, this is a sort of equivalent difficult project to what you will encounter as an engineer. You can do this, although it is non-engineering. You will be able to, you can be let through the door.
Yeah, and I think it's easier to measure how good someone is at maths than it is to measure how good they are at solving engineering problems.
Yeah, okay, right. This is the sort of thing of being very intelligent but not having common sense, it seems. What were their like planned outcomes for people taking this course? I mean, when you say engineering, that feels also like a broad church. Was it possible to specialize? Were you like going, I'm kind of zoning in on something here?
Yeah, well, I was doing the total, like the full name of it was electronics and computer systems. So it was a bit of software stuff and a bit of like hardware electronics. And by this point I was like, okay, I want to learn how to make synths. And so I found that exact course that would teach me.
Where did that come from though? I want to learn to make synths. That's quite
because I started making a synth. I started making a 4-voice. I bought a keybed and I was trying to write some code that was going to scan the keybed and like make the CVs and stuff. And I was like, it can't be that hard. And so I started doing an online course. And then, my partner at the time was like, why don't you just go to university and do it properly? And I was like, oh, okay. So I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
You could have just asked Dave Rossum, or like, well, that's what the guy behind you did. He just like licensed it from Dave Rossum, the keyboard scanning thing. But I mean, I don't know what would have been cheaper. Probably it was cheaper to go to university, maybe. I'm not sure. Well, it's probably better for you, definitely in the long run.
Yeah. I mean, I learned a lot of things that I didn't realize I needed to learn.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so you were like, I want to make a synth. Did you think that was as a job, or you just like, you kind of, what's your feeling about your life plans at that point? Are you one of those people that's like, I'll just see what que sera, I'll see what happens? Or are you like, do you have an inkling?
My sort of medium-term goal was finish the degree and then get some kind of a boring job like designing microwaves or something, and try and learn how to get good enough at it that eventually, 10 years from then, I'll be able to get a job at a synth company or something.
Yeah, okay.
But then I ended up designing my first module 6 months into the degree, which was the mid-side processor, which is still... Actually, I should have brought in the original one because it's kicking around in a box, but I think it's at the workshop.
Can you please say the name of what's it called?
It's Lurmismislur. Or LRMSMSLR.
LRMSLR.
I'm sure I've got one around here somewhere.
This is like the in Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, the Flintstone and a fur. This is basically the school of product naming, which is great. So you were aware of Eurorack and the kind of... Did you have a Eurorack, or were you kind of like... Yeah. You did?
Yeah, I got my first modular case, I think, in 2009. And so I was using the modular in the band.
Oh, okay.
And then I was doing DIY, and like, this is like DIY pre-thonk.
Yeah.
Like when it was, a bit more like...
The Wild West of...
Yeah, you email some guy and say, can I get a circuit board kind of thing.
What sort of things did you make? What were your like triumphant builds? I
made a few of the Manhattan analog modules, like the mixers.
I love those. I have them, but I didn't build them.
Okay.
I did them as kits.
Yeah, they weren't kits when I got them, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I bought the circuit board and the panel, but it might have even been circuit board from one person and panel from somebody else. I've got, I don't know, actually. No, you can't quite see
You might have
them.
to describe it.
What is it? It's a surge resonant equalizer, which is, I don't know, I think it's a 10-band EQ. Sounds amazing. That was a thing where you bought the panel and one of the circuit boards from the Manhattan analog guy, and then you bought the Ken Stone PCV from I think that was from LB. So yeah.
Don't know why those weren't just flying off the shelves.
And also it's like it's an EQ that I don't know how many it's it'd be maybe
like
30 HP.
Long.
Yeah.
Oh, it's wide. I thought you said it's deep.
No, I mean I think it's only that deep, but yeah, I think it's about 30 HP, and I've got two of them for running stereo.
For stereo. Talk to me about mid-side, your intentions and behind that, and sort of about stereo in general, because I rarely ever do anything in mid-side. And it's definitely somewhere I just put my hand up and just say, teacher, I don't really understand mid-side, except to say that I kind of get that you could do something to the left and right equally, just as you could do something to the thing that is center panned. And I can I understand the concept of, frequency spectrum. So I guess I can understand the concept of frequency spectrum as applied to left and right. What's right, what's left, and what's in the middle. So why would you make a module like that? What was it that you were seeking to do that you felt was so compelling? And what should everyone kind of be thinking? Why should everyone be thinking about mid-side, basically?
I mean, I guess one of the reasons was the circuit is pretty simple, and so I could work out how it would work, when I didn't really know that much. But also it's so yeah, because of my sound engineering background, you use mid-side in the studio a fair bit, and the kind of classic use is in mastering. So you can do things like make the highs like on the sides, kind of bring them out a bit more, and then cut the bottom end, because you don't want, when you're cutting vinyl, you don't want any out of phase low end. If you compress the mid and the side separately, you don't have to have your side chains exactly the same. For example, if you've got just say you've got a drum track and you're running it through a stereo compressor, and there's like a low tom hit that's panned, if you don't have your side chains connected, then you'll compress one side harder than the other, and so the stereo image shifts.
Yeah.
And then if you do have them connected, then it'll sort of pump the side that doesn't have the hit
tom
on it.
on it. Yeah.
If you then use mid side and you can compress them separately, instead of having like an image that's sort of moving around like this, you've got like the center and then like the sides like this.
Yeah.
So you can make them kind of move separately, but it always kind of stays as a fairly coherent symmetrical
Yeah,
image.
I totally see why that would. Yeah, it does make sense. So then,
so
in modular,
because it didn't exist before I made it, I had some ideas of what I'd be able to do, and some of those assumptions were wrong, and some of them were right. So, yeah, one of the things, like, have you ever played a 2600? Like,
yeah.
You got, nice.
It's a bit blurry, but this the baby one. It's not
the baby one.
It's not the big one, but I mean, it's small but well formed.
When you turn up the reverb and you're listening to the speakers, and you get that super wide thing, that's mid side.
Right.
The side signal, when you decode it, the side gets sent in phase to the left and out of phase to the right.
Yeah.
So your reverb is phase flipped.
Yes. And it creates a sense of spaciousness. Unfortunately, when it's collapsed to mono, it creates a sense of a complete lack of reverb.
Yeah. But why would you ever collapse something to mono?
Well, if perhaps you've got I'm trying to pick up my Amazon speaker device, but many people listen to these mono speakers, right? And then
you mean like the little ones? They're not mono.
Do they actually play in stereo out of the unit?
They play in mid-side stereo.
Do they?
Yeah. Because the mid has got most of the stuff, and then the side is just like the differences.
Yeah.
So if you're designing a tiny little speaker like that, you just sum everything to mono and then run it out of the big speaker, and then you have a little speaker that's just the side, like sticking out the side, and instead of having to have two big speakers to do stereo, you can do it with one big and one small.
That makes sense. You put all your sort of ammunition into one big mono, and then you have a little side one to create that sense. That's interesting.
Yeah.
But then, you went to, audio engineering school or whatever, you did this as a degree level. Do they not always bang on about, I've got it right here, there's a little mono button on my Audient Nero, and everyone's like, you're gonna die, mono's coming, baby, it's just gonna ruin your mixes. So I suppose and I think it's great if that's not the case, but what do you think? Is it not something that you encounter much in the real world?
Well, if you think about where most people listen to music, I mean, anyone who's listening on headphones, it's always stereo. In your
and
car,
even if they have one
stereo.
it doesn't collapse it to mono, right? You're still just hearing left or right.
And you can't make mixed decisions by like what if somebody has only got one headphone in. I think a long time ago, like maybe when the people who are writing the books about these things, when there was AM radio and stuff, mono compatibility was more important.
The one thing is to say in clubs, for example, clubs is a place where I think it is not, but basically, I think clubs are a place where things do get played in mono, but I don't know how they do their conversion process, and it's sort of
the clubs, because I've worked and played in a lot of clubs. None of them have been. Oh no, there was one that was mono, but that was because it was a very badly maintained system. And
in your experience, they're mostly stereo.
Yeah,
interesting.
And even like big nightclubs, they'll tend to be stereo, but you don't just have a left and a right. They'll kind of, as you go around the room, it'll be like left, right, left, right, left, right.
Do you mean as they have multiple speaker stacks? So
Yeah.
Do you? I suppose it's just that thing of I went to see a gig the other day, and we were at the left speaker. We were in fact left of the left speaker, so we had no benefit of right. I remember there is somewhere a Kraftwerk quote where they were like, stereo is a privilege. For those who are in the center, which is not everyone, and so it's an interesting one. But I've had this thing of playing the 2600, that spring reverb just sounds absolutely glorious. But I didn't use it because I was worried about that, so I just used Valhalla reverb instead.
Well, I mean, you can still just record the left channel and you get the reverb in mono.
But I guess it is such a gorgeous stereo sound, isn't it? Like just that, in phase, out phase, it just sounds amazing. Like I don't really know why it sounds amazing, like other than our ears just hear differences.
I think it works really well with reverbs because like normally when you're decoding from mid-side to left-right, you're adding and subtracting the side from the mid. And when you do it with the reverb, like, because the normal way you have to do it, everything has to be time aligned. Like if you start putting delays, like very short delays on this mid or side, or even if you process them through digital stuff and there's different amounts of latency, the whole thing just collapses. But when you're doing it with reverb, where you've got that kind of the length of the tail, the space is made by the different bits of the reverb combining in and out of phase with the dry signal. And so, that's why you get this spaciousness. It's like a spaciousness that doesn't exist in the real, especially if you got headphones on. Like you're getting this crazy thing that could never happen, like in the real world.
It's like a more extreme version because in the real world, your left hears some of your right hears some of your left. If you have stereo hearing, that is. Which for very recently, until January, I didn't have stereo hearing for about 3 years. So,
that's no good.
Yeah, I know.
What?
Oh, one of my ears broke.
Oh no!
But yeah, it's been fixed again. The doctor opened it up and stuck a piece of titanium in my ear to like rebuild my ear bone chain.
Oh wow!
Yeah, which was good of him.
Yeah,
so
very good.
It's totally
thanks
a thing.
NHS.
Yeah, it really is. But you make this Lermslurnimaher for differ, like, but you're making it for what? What were the kind of interesting, crazy processing things that you would A, suggest doing, or B, did do, C, built it to do?
The thing I wanted to do to begin with was because I had I had the Tip Top 2040 filter.
Yeah,
and the bubble sound. That's so good. I've still got. That was the first filter I bought, and it's just sitting there in the rack.
2008 special kind of Eurorack vibes, and it's really good. Yep.
And then I had the bubble sound SEM20.
Yeah, also that era.
Yeah, like I'd been doing like because I was used to the Evolver, so I was doing Evolver stereo stuff, but I didn't have matching filters, and so it was. I had like a 4-pole on one side and a 2-pole on the other. It didn't sound like a synth. It didn't sound like it wasn't coherent. Like this kind of. It was like this. Yeah, and so I was like, well, I'll get the mid-side module, and I'll just filter the mid and the side separately.
And then it's fine, right?
Yeah, which I did, and then it's like when I looked into it a bit more to try and work out why it didn't work exactly, because filters work by changing the phase of things. And so when you change the phase and then recombine it, you'll end up with a low pass filter on the left and a high pass filter on the right.
Okay.
And weird things like that didn't quite work. But then I started using it a lot for reverb because I love spring reverbs.
So just to clarify, there is no that doesn't work, does it? You can't sort of filter the left and the mid differently.
Well, it depends how you recombine them. You can take stuff out of the side and it will like just narrow the image. But if you take stuff out of the mid and leave it in the side, then you end up with weird phasey things.
Okay.
If you run a stereo signal in that has a fair bit of mid pan stuff and then low pass the side. Actually, I'm not sure if this works with all low pass filters or only ones that have 180 degree phase shift to do the cancellation. But I've definitely done it with one filter where it's like, wait a second, why is this a high pass? Like it specifically says low pass on the front of it.
Yeah, this is, I mean, if you use like, is it linear phase filters like FabFilter EQ4 and stuff, or EQ3 indeed, could you like Could you use those? Is it just because we're in the analog domain and there's too much like phase 4-dimensional hyperchess here for me to like understand really? And I've never really understood the nature. I've heard people say that EQs and filters change phase and that's how they work, but I don't really understand it.
Yeah, just to explain how the filtering phase change thing works. So if you've got the full, just say the full spectrum is like this and it's running through and everything is in phase, and then you put a filter in it, so you get the high frequencies and you flip the phase of the high frequencies, and then you recombine that with the original dry signal, then this cancels out and this is twice as loud.
Yeah.
And that's how you make a low pass filter.
Is that what they're actually doing? All it's doing is flipping the phase of the period apart above the cutoff.
Yeah.
And then it's adding them together, and that cancels, the inverted phase cancels out the positive phase going in.
Yeah.
But then, so why would that then cause, if the signal is gone, why would it then cause a problem if you're
with mid-side?
Yeah.
Well, because you're doing that process twice. Because, you could do that and then just listen to the mid and the side, which doesn't sound great. But, the filtering works for the mid and the side, but then when you recombine them, if you've got the phase changed bits, like just say I think maybe it's the 2040 filter where the output comes out of phase with the input. Yeah, I think it's that one. I don't know. One of the filters I have does it.
Yeah.
But and then you recombine it, and then all of a sudden.
Yeah, I'll just have to take your word for it. I'll definitely take your word for it. Interesting. That would probably have been my first thought. It's like, ooh, juicy filters on one side, but not in the middle, blah, blah, blah. We've understood there are problems potentially with filters. So are there other things that are interesting to kind of mid-side process? What sort of things did you end up doing?
One of my favorites is using VCAs to change the mid and the side amplitude at audio rates.
Yeah.
So you can, like this module, which, hang on, I should find one that's got knobs on it. I pulled the knobs off for something else, but this is the mid-side plus.
Yeah.
So that's the Lurimismus Lure.
Yeah.
But with a width control. So with the recombining of the mid and the side here, this knob and this CV basically control VCAs and one VCA and one 4-quadrant multiplier. So when you have it set to, there's no knobs.
We can imagine.
I'll pull the knobs off something else. This is how things end up with no knobs on them.
Check out my new Oberheim knobs on the mid-side plus.
So when you've got equal amounts, so that setting there is equal amounts of mid and side.
Yeah.
So then that gives you regular left, right.
Yeah.
If you go in the middle, you just have mid and no side. So then you've got a mono. But then if you flip the phase of the side, then it flips the left and the right of the stereo image. And then, because that's all VCAs, you can do it at audio rate.
Huh. What does that sound like?
Sounds kind of like ring mod, but it's going through your head. Like rather than, it's like a stereo ring mod.
Sounds really good.
Yeah, that was the patch that I was showing off to people the first time I went to Super Booth, and like that's why Ben Divkid was like, I'm going to make a video explaining how this works.
Yeah, like this. The world needs more of this.
Yeah, it was that patch. That's a cool patch.
Interesting. So audio rate stuff. I mean, is there like, part of me is like choruses to choruses. I'm just thinking of making things more lush and wide and in interesting ways. It's like I love long algorithmic reverbs for that kind of, for giving you that kind of headphone galaxy that you can live in. And I feel like I'm sure there must be some things that you could kind of find another way into that galaxy using this. I just don't know what the effects would be.
The cool thing with this, like with being able to control the stuff at audio rate is, I'm kind of working on this new terminology for stereo signals, but you know how you're looking at a waveform view on the computer screen, and you've got your wave going up like this, and so you've got time in that dimension and amplitude in that dimension.
Yeah.
And then you've got your left and your right. Imagine taking the right and turning it on its side and sliding them together.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the end of it, you've got like your oscilloscope pattern.
I was just say you get like a Lissajous pattern, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then imagine that as a three-dimensional object.
Yeah.
Where you've got time, so it's like a spiral kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like a sort of twisted ribbon.
You can make those kind of waveforms with that kind of thing.
Twisted ribbon waveforms.
Yeah.
Didn't Square Pusher have a track called Circle Wave? Maybe we need to create, you're almost creating the circle wave that bends around on itself. But does that sound like, wait, so is this a visualization method or is this a thing that will actually make a sound?
Well, this is a way of making stereo waveforms. Like instead of having two mono waveforms, you can make a waveform which is natively stereo by thinking of it as like a three-dimensional object instead of a two-dimensional object.
How does that really work? As in, what does it sound like? What's that?
Well, it can sound like anything because it's just sort of a different way of describing it. But when you start thinking about how to describe it in that way, and start thinking about having like, phase offsets between left and right, you end up with waveforms that are kind of coherent in stereo and have lots of width, so you can run them into stereo filters. Because you know how everybody is like, I'm making stereo things, and like the first thing you do when you're like, I'm making a stereo synth is you get your mono thing and you run it into a stereo reverb, or you get multiple voices and you pan them a bit. People kind of have moved back up the signal path with stereo. And so stereo filters are like a thing now. But then, stereo oscillators that are really stereo.
That is a really interesting thought, yeah. And what are the kinds of controls? Are they wavetables? Are they... In what sense do the sides need to relate to each other is a question. Like, what's the difference between just simply having two mono oscillators, would you say?
Well, I use the Midside Plus with mono oscillators to make stereo waveforms. If you're thinking about it in a midside kind of way, you can do things like have, like mid is everything that is in phase between the left and the right, and then the side is the out of phase stuff or different phase stuff. So you could have like a fundamental in the mid. Like you could put a sawtooth into the mid, and then like another sawtooth like 2 octaves up, slightly detuned into the side, where that detuning will kind of work in and out of phase with the original fundamental. Like,
that surely would sound absolutely incredible. Can you please? I think you should make. You should obviously make an oscillator, but you should also make a polysynth that uses the same. I mean, that would be like, you should make your 4-voice polysynth. You definitely should do that.
Well, but the other thing is, when you start thinking about those things, it's pretty easy to patch them. One thing I find with Eurorack that bugs me a little bit is there's too many people who are like, I'm going to make a thing that does this. I'm going to make a module that does this thing. And it's like, no, you just patch these. Like, it's a modular synthesizer.
Yeah. Are you saying that you could make an oscillator would effectively set you up to win in mid-side mode? I just feel like I somehow would end up making something that would collapse or not function. And I don't understand really the structure of the patch. It would just be interesting. Like, you should.
Once you start fiddling around with it, it kind of, you work out what works and what doesn't pretty quickly. Yeah.
I mean, is there more to say about mid-side and stereo? I think it's just a really under-explained and sort of explored part of technology. And I don't know what I don't know. So I'm interested in what you would like to say about it.
One thing which I thought of that I didn't say before is a lot of people say mid-side is not compatible with mono, but it's just a format. it's just as compatible as left right. Like you could say left right stereo is not compatible with mono because if one of them is out of phase from the other, then you get nothing. With mid side, all of the mid is always exactly what you get because the mid is a mono sum. You know, when you press your mono button on your monitors, you're just hearing the mid. If people are really concerned about mono compatibility, then mid side is good, not bad. Because you see a lot of people on the internet being like, no, you can't do mid side. It never works for mono. But yeah, A, mono doesn't matter anymore, and B, yes, it does.
Yeah, okay. So you make this module, and what was the kind of reception for it? Because it's quite an esoteric, this is my layman's outside, I sort of understanding. I'm not a businessman, I'm not selling modules, but I do see what goes on. I feel like people would struggle to understand something like that and get because this is a bit of a sort of black art of, it's a lesser understood thing. People understand left and right. I don't think people understand mid-side to the same degree. So I suppose, was it well received? And you obviously continue to make modules. So I feel like people are buying it, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, originally I wanted it for me. And I think I ordered 10 circuit boards because that was the minimum you could get. And so I was like, well, I'll have 2. And then I just posted on Modwiggler, like, I've got 8 of these. Like, does anyone want them? And yeah, they all went in a day. Because, this was just DIY at the time. Because,
When is this? What year?
2015. I had my original 10 and then more people want them. And so I ordered maybe another 10 or 20. And then Steve from Thonk sent me an email saying, I would like to buy 50. And I was like, 50 circuit boards? That is ridiculous. Yeah, it was basically that, I think, that kind of made it be a company. And and the original ones, I don't think I've got one laying around, but the original ones had red panels.
Right.
But then, people were like, I love it, but I don't want a red module. Can you make it silver? And I said, no, because I don't want to order things from 2 different places. I'm using PCB panels.
I was going to ask you a bit about the visual design aspect without sort of like rushing ahead, but like where, you have quite it feels like Make Noisy in that sense that you've used the same kind of like drawn, angular, handmade sort of, you have used a mouse and drawn straight lines to write the letters and words is a thing Tony Rolando did apparently in his, PCB editing program. Is that how you did it? And can you talk about your sort of design inspirations?
Well, I also did it in the PCB thing because my original idea was that I didn't want to try and find somewhere that could make metal panels for me.
Because just for those who don't know, like if you're having metal panels made, that's very expensive. Like it's like apparently the most expensive part of the module. Is that correct?
I've never made them, so I don't know.
Apparently it can be, like shockingly so. And then you have to obviously have it silk screened and there's a whole process. The kinds of companies that do silk screening on a custom made metalworked panel with custom drill holes, that SH1T just adds up. And the kinds of companies that do that make it for big companies that are not tiny wee little baby companies where it's like, this is only going to cost $100. They make them for expensive items. So you just, So hence you do things with the PCB and it's cheaper and it actually makes it possible to make a little indie product, right?
Yeah. And you can also just get everything from one place. The original logo, like the WORNG logo which is still my logo. WORNG was the name of my music project.
Right.
My solo thing. And it was like, wouldn't it be funny if it was actually a company? Ha ha ha. I'm going to put the name on the panels as though it's a real company. And I kind of wanted it to look like the Metallica logo.
Yeah.
But it was on a 0.5 mil grid. And so I was quite limited by what I could do. And so, the logo that I have is that logo that I did one afternoon, like my very bad Metallica rip-off logo.
I'm now just giggling the Metallica logo to like enjoy the reference. Yeah, of course.
And then
The acronym, which came out a couple of years ago, that's a better version of my Metallica logo.
I enjoy that you called it acronym as well, because it's just a sort of like very meta kind of reference to to those types of oscillators that always have an acronym in their names.
I don't really take things that seriously. I don't think it's ridiculous that I get to make things that make weird beepy boopy sounds as a job now.
It shouldn't be taken entirely seriously, basically.
Yeah.
I think I get you. Wait, so hang on. This is your job, and I suppose that's the kind of, that takes a real, like, that is not a trivial thing. So what was the sort of point where you were like, man, I can stop working at the university, if that's what you were doing before?
I stopped working at the university a fair bit beforehand because I was working as a live sound engineer. And so I was, for a while, I was working 4 days at the university and mixing shows like 5 nights a week. It became a bit ridiculous. Yeah. So then I was like, okay, I'm just going to mix bands. And then I got to the point where I was like, oh, I'm approaching 40. I don't want to be out all night anymore. I started working, there's a sort of museum/studio of synths in Melbourne called Mess. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but
I feel like I have.
Yeah.
I'm going to Google it. Melbourne, literally Melbourne Mess?
It's Melbourne Electronic Sound Studio is what Mess stands for.
Yep.
But yeah, I was working there as a tech, like doing maintenance and stuff.
Out of interest, what were the sort of common things that would go wrong with synths? What would you be fixing?
The 2600 would just keep blowing up, like
just it wished to die.
Yeah,
it's had a good life.
All of the bypass caps in the original 2600s are tantalum ones, and so when they fail to a short circuit. It's over the power rails. So, and because it was, I'm
not an electronics guy, but short circuits on the power rails just seems like a bad thing.
But yeah, people, like I'd go in and there'd be a report, someone saying, oh, someone was using the 2600 and it started sounding all weird, but then smoke came out of it and then it was fine again. Which is the cap over the power rails, like they're just the little ones, like the tiny little capacitors. But
they're little like yellow ones.
Yeah, the yellow ones that look like they're dipped in something.
Yeah. They kind of look like baby Jolly Ranchers, but not sort of, they almost look like Sweeties.
So they go to short circuit, and so then you've got just the power going straight through it, and then they burn up. They start going wonky. The power rails droop, and then which is the synth started sounding weird, and then it burns out, which is the smoke coming out of it, and then you've just got no capacitor there anymore, and so it's fine. Just a little bit noisier than it used to be, but functionally okay. And so then I would go in and I'd pull out the burnt bits and then replace it with a new one. But yeah, that 2600, I spent a lot of time fixing various things.
Do you think caps are better now? Parts surely better now, or is it just any part? As we can basically both attest, any part that's 40 or over starts to fail. How do you think we're in for a easier repair with modern synths or worse?
I mean, I think about the stuff that I've designed, and because the parts are so much smaller now, you got a lot of space inside a 2600 to space things out, and it's all through hole, which is, it's easier in some ways to replace. If I had to replace something, I would probably prefer to replace a surface mount thing where you can just heat it up with hot air and grab the part with tweezers and replace it. But, fault finding and stuff with really dense circuit boards, and especially if you, like this module of mine, all of the parts are in here. Because I don't really want bits on the back that can short out on things.
Yeah.
But that also means that now if you have to replace something, you've got all of the jacks and
in the way physically,
yeah.
So and you have to take the panel off and
yeah. I don't know if you would be, because maybe in 40 years time you're not going to be able to get through hole parts anymore.
That's never even occurred to me, but that also seems like a reasonable thing to say as well.
Synths weren't really designed initially, I think, to last as long as they did. Like, you know, if it's, you know, the mid 70s and you've just come out with a new thing, you just kind of make it and put it out, and you're already thinking about the next thing that's going to replace it, and, you know, thinking about doing polyphonic stuff and having presets, and then people are thinking about digital things. So I don't know. I think we look at that sort of stuff in a very different perspective to the original, you know, people designing things, I think.
Certainly, yeah. If you ask Tom Oberheim, he's like, I can't believe that these are, you know, this is still a thing, really. He didn't even think he would have access to his company again after the late 80s, let alone have it be under his control in some degree, and then still to be producing things brand new. But it's a question, like, why didn't you think about that? Will through-hole even exist? What are, you know, 3p capacitors and become £1 each, you know, or more, when there's no more of them, because we know how supply and demand works.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because there was a time when you couldn't get like the CEM chips, and, you know, when I first started fixing Junos that had dead voice chips, like all you could do was pull it out and replace it with one from another one. Like, you know, I knew people who had just like piles of Junos, like, that were, you know,
donors,
scavenged. Yeah. And then people worked out the acetate thing, and now there's, you know, remanufactured chips and things, and people are paying so much to pull apart old things that it's worth remanufacturing them. So maybe they will be doing that with through-hole parts. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe it's a self-fulfilling thing. Yeah, that makes sense.
I heard a while ago that NASA was buying up old medical equipment because they needed to get parts for the space shuttle, and they couldn't get the bits and pieces that they needed. You know, I guess this was a while ago when they still were flying the space shuttle, but yeah, like to get the big 5-inch floppy disk drives and stuff like that.
Oh man. Yeah, I can believe it, because there's obviously like a generation of legacy technology. And I can also, you know, all I've read about is the thing about how they have standardized soldering, and, you know, and there's been a point where I sat there and just went, they obviously have to make stuff to such an insanely high degree spec, because it's going to space where no one can fix it.
Yeah.
Where there isn't the space shuttle sounded wonky, and then
smoke came out of it.
Smoke came out, but it seems fine now. Yeah. There's no like Morgan that can be flown in a little like rocket to catch you up. Yeah, no, but I can believe it. And it also speaks to this idea that I think we have what we perceive as expensive in technology terms is not. And I think we've maybe lost sight of that fact, because obviously if we rewind to the 2600s and things, those were sold for a lot of money at the time, you know, and things like Fairlights, you know, the cutting edge technology of the day, you know, legendarily cost more than a house. And you know, and I have friends who, I even interviewed the guys from Synclavier, and I have a friend who has one of those systems, and you know, he'll you know, tell you all about how it was built to a very high standard, to a standard that most technology is not built these days. And there's a kind of, I think as consumers, we as a general trend have come to sort of assume that the quality standards have always remained the same, and that through volume, you know, we are paying less, or maybe they're just better at it now and we're paying less. But I think it's true to say that everything is made to a price. Even expensive things are made to a price. And I suppose it's understanding that there's a lot more to the price of something than just the parts, and there is an expected lifespan. I don't know any music technology companies that actually, you know, and I have been on the inside. I haven't worked in manufacturers, but I've worked in distribution, and I've been in meetings with the heads of synth companies, and there has never ever been a discussion about planned obsolescence. It's not something that is ever entertained as a notion. You just build the thing, but you are building a thing to a price, and that means that you're limited. You can't necessarily have the most high-end components. It wouldn't make sense to, because people wouldn't pay the price that would be required. I suppose it would be interesting to get your take on that, because obviously you're making things and putting them into the world. How do you think about the price that needs to be charged for things and the quality that needs to be offered? How long does it have to last for too?
I mean, I try and make things as good as I can make them without it being excessive, I guess. Yeah, the op amps that I use in most of my modules are a little bit better than the ones that are used in everything. The thing that I really value about it is like the way that they clip, like, because the TLO 7.4s that everybody uses, depending on which configuration you have them like connected in, they can clip in a way where as the signal goes up to hit the top power rail, it swings down to the negative one. So instead of your signal just getting cut off like that, it goes like that, which sounds awful. So I use op amps that will just, when it clips, it just like stays where it's supposed to. When you're looking at the breakdown of things, a lot of the most expensive part of it is with something like the soundstage or the vector space. Like, it's paying someone to do all of the jack nuts up. Like,
having assembled a few synths, because I bought I got the Moog Mavis kit, and there's a kit from Dreadbox as well. Yeah. And obviously the Tom Whitwell's, workshop synth. The biggest job is screwing the damn nuts in.
Yeah, you can get a thing that looks like a screwdriver, but it has like a socket on the end with the two little pins. And before I had a proper one of those, I had a 3D printed one that I got from I think from Exploding Shed. The people who do it full time just have like a rubber thing on the end of a drill. And so they're not even just like boom, 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 like that. Yeah. How many sockets have I got on a soundstage? Like 30 or something?
5, 10, 15, 20. Yeah, you do. Do you do it yourself? Do you have some?
Oh, no. No. I mean, I've made enough modules in my life. Yeah, they're made now by Glasgow Synth Guild.
Right.
And before that, they were made by WMD.
Yeah.
Before they closed down the manufacturing side of things.
Yeah.
But when I started, I was building it all by hand. It was all through holes. I was hand soldering things and taking it to the post office. Actually, that's the other thing. Taking things to the post office is the worst part about manufacturing. Like, you don't have a very friendly post office in your part of Melbourne. Well,
is it just the time involved and the
it's
effort?
the time. It's putting something in a box. I mean, this is a silly, petty thing to complain about, but this is one of the reasons why I get, I get the manufacturing to be done by people whose job is manufacturing, because I'm just a guy that thinks about a circuit and then makes the circuit. And
these are different skills.
Yeah, very much. It got to the point where I would be selling a couple of modules every day. And so, and where I lived at the time, it would take me it was too close to drive, so I would walk, but walking would take like half an hour. And so then an hour of my day would be gone just going to the post office and back. And
I was going to say, you just you get a bike or something, but that's just, then you also have to carry lots of things.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a bike with a good basket now. I could probably manage it these days, but back then I didn't.
So I also wanted to ask you a bit about Soundstage and some of your other modules. I mean, you have a bunch of things, and there's, I think, one sort of holistic question is kind of do you have like a house style? How do you actually think about what makes a wrong module? What is that? And of these kind of, the modules you have made, are there any that you would be like, this is what I'm particularly proud of, this one for this reason?
Well, I'm most proud of Soundstage, I think, because that kind of didn't really exist as an idea until I did. Well, I mean, as far as house style, I basically everything that I've made has just been a thing that I thought should exist. I don't go, oh, what's missing from the market? Like, what can we, make smaller or bigger or cheaper or whatever.
But where are you getting that? Where are you doing that thinking? I suppose. Where is that thinking coming from? Do you have a deliberate thinking time? Do you afford that, or do you just? Are you
I'm
just
thinking about stuff all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
The idea for the soundstage came from when I was doing a lot of soldering, and I'd be listening to podcasts while I was soldering. And there's a BBC podcast called In Our Time where they talk about like history and science things. And so I would listen to that a lot while I was soldering. And one thing that I noticed is they always pan the guests like across the stereo field.
Oh God, do they?
And so if you're listening on headphones and someone starts to talk, you can tell who it is by where they are, where it's panned. And I was like, oh, this is a genius idea. And like the old, like old mixers that would just have a switch for panning rather than having, like the full...
The Beatles era, left, mid, right. I had a leaf through one of the Recording the Beatles books at one point. Do you know the answer to this? Whether that was just designed to create separation on a stereo 2-track or what have you, to separate the things? Or was that actually really because they felt that the best expression of stereo was complete hard right, left, middle?
What I imagine, like when stereo came in, like when it was a cool new thing, they were like, whoa, this is crazy. Look, the guitar's over there and the drums over there. Like, because there weren't any conventions like we have now. And it was
headphones. Well, there were, but people probably not using headphones at home as much.
But also, I think nobody was thinking about like, oh, you need to put the kick drum in the center because you need to divide the amount of energy needed to reproduce it at its highest level equally between the speakers. I think they were just like, oh, this is cool. Like, it's stereo. Look what we can do now. And when people were first starting to do music in 5.1, like, there were ridiculous things like that, like stuff swirling around. Like I had a Cornelius. Do you know Cornelius?
Japanese musician. Yeah.
He played an incredible concert in Melbourne many years ago that I think they only sold like 20 tickets to, and so basically everybody that I knew, like it was a venue of thousands of people. Everybody got like the guest list was thousands of people long, and then everybody afterwards was like, if I knew that was going to be that good, I would have paid to come see this. Anyway, but yeah, the Point album I got on DVD when that came out, and yeah, it's all this stuff flying around and swirling and things. Now 5.1 mixing of sound is kind of fairly
mature.
I don't know.
To me, it feels like people are using it less creatively, or do you think that there's a right and a wrong way, or is there a sort of, or are there things that are desirable that have emerged?
I think it's not creative or not creative. I think it's like a lot of the time people will mix assuming that it's going to be played back on a system where there's a good left and right speaker and a tiny little center and then tiny little rears. And so they're like, well, we can't rely on those channels to reproduce anything, so I'll just put reverb in them or whatever. I think it's conservatism. And I think that that's not necessarily a good thing because you don't want to be listening to... Sorry, not necessarily a bad thing because you don't want everything going all over the place. But then also when you've got when all of a sudden you can make like stuff fly around behind you and you couldn't do it before, then it would be kind of weird to not at least, play around with it.
Yeah, no, completely. I'm thinking of like if you're a filmmaker and, you've got a scary scene where like a monster is introduced, it might change how you choose to like block and structure it based on the fact that you knew you had this kind of technology available. If I thought I could really rely on making it sound like something was behind you, then I would really go for it. I think of that. I went on that alien encounter ride, wherever it was in Disneyland. Or is it Orlando? I don't know where it is, but people can correct. But
I don't know.
It's the one where basically you go in and there's like this, you're strapped in a seat and it's like a 4D experience. You heard voices above you, and I think they have a real actor. And they're like, oh, yeah, we're going to come and, we're here to rescue you. And then suddenly the lights go off and they're like, ah! And the guy gets killed by the monster. And then they spritz you with water as if it's blood splattering you in the dark, so you couldn't see that it wasn't blood, And I'm like, that sort of thing is the kind of, because someone's like, hey, we've got this water spritzer, then I suppose also it's just this idea that, functionally equivalent, people can't rely on, and I think maybe that's where that mono collapsing thing comes from, is a sort of, primal fear that there might be people who you can't rely on there being stereo. It's, and I think it is an interesting question of like, perhaps you can, like, realistically, everyone's got headphones, and fair enough. The soundstage, by the way, I think we should say how that works. I think it is a really interesting concept, is you basically, instead of having, 6 inputs and a left-right pan control, you simply have a field of jack sockets that represents the sort of the stereo and the EQ field from left to right and from bass to high frequencies represented as a square. And you plug the socket into the part of the square that is high frequency into the right, low frequency into the middle. And what it does is it like EQs it accordingly, does it? It band passes it, I guess. And so you only get that band that emerges and you get it placed in the stereo fields in that way.
They're not, it's not band pass because that would separate things too much. But it's high and low pass, and they're kind of, there's a fair bit of overlap.
Basically, if you'd given this to the Beatles, you'd have taught them not to just hard pan stuff left and right. They'd be like, we can put it in the middle, boys. You seem so like interested in the stereo space. Do you feel that there are ways that people are or are not using stereo? I'm thinking also of things like binaural, and there's that really interesting, you've obviously must have seen that module that's got the kind of 2 rotating dials that I forget what it's called now. I had a demo of it at Superbooth. I've said this before, I think, on this podcast, where I was like, I went and got a demo and I put on the headphones and he started playing my voice into my own ears. But binaural, he was like, oh, you're actually the guy who made that video. I've been using this video audio as a kind of, I was like, this is very meta. But it's just, it illustrated an interesting thing, which is, a binaural front back panning. And I suppose, returning to the question is just, what do you feel that people are not using stereo for effectively, or are there ways that are underutilized?
I mean, I don't know what every single person is doing, but I feel that people have a tendency, when they have a stereo voice or a stereo something, to just hard pan it and not use the space in between. That's why the mid-side stuff is fun, because you can, if you reduce the amount of side a little bit, then you can bring things in. I assume that you probably are an Ableton Live user.
You assume, I've got that look about me. You assume correctly. I look like Mono Lake, who I interviewed recently, and I indeed do, yes.
So you've just got the balance control on the, like, you've got a pan for a mono and then you've got a balance for a stereo. So your left channel is always going just to the left output and your right channel is always going to the right output. And you're just adjusting the relative levels between them to sort of skew the image.
Yeah.
And have you used Pro Tools where you've got 2 pan pots? Yeah, live, left always goes to left, right always goes to right. And you're just changing the relative levels.
Yeah.
Pro Tools, you've got a pan pot for left and a pan pot for right. So if you want something so in live, if you want something that's halfway left, you end up with like left is full volume and right is, I don't know, 8 dB down or something.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Yes.
In Pro Tools, you have left all the way to left, and then you get your right channel and you're pulling it in. So you've got some of the right channels going to the left. And both of them have their own positives and negatives.
I have looked at this briefly, but not really fully understood how do I even put this? Like, the dynamics of panning can be different.
Well, what I'm talking about with this stuff is specific for stereo things, not for mono. And the panning law stuff is more for mono things. It's about the relative loudness as you move from one speaker, using just one speaker, to using both. Just say you've got a stereo channel, and it's got a very exciting thing, which is just me saying left down the left channel and you saying right down the right channel.
Yeah.
If we put it into live and we pan it or balance it all the way to the right, all we hear is you.
Yeah.
And you don't hear me at all. And then as you pull it back, the level of me comes up to the point where we're in the middle, and then you hear both of us evenly. And then as we pan the rest of the way, you disappear and I'm there.
I see. Well, you don't hear me in the right side or you in the left side. I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then the Pro Tools way, because you're panning them individually, but the volume, you've got one volume for both.
Yeah.
So you're always hearing both of us at equal levels, but it's different amounts in different speakers.
Yeah, I mean, I could intrinsically see where the difference is. I suppose from a creative perspective, it's interesting. I've never mixed that way.
Yeah.
What sort of things do you do creatively when you have that option?
Just say you've got some stems and the stereo stems, and you're mixing them down, and like you're doing a mastering job for somebody or something. If everything sounds way too wide, but then you're like, oh wait, I want to bring these ones in a bit, then you can pan them in and make a smaller image, so you end up with things kind of sitting in the space in between the speakers a bit more.
There is utility, like there is a device in Live called Utility, which has a width control, and has like bass mono and stuff. I wonder if you could kind of can you hack that if you basically use Utility to reduce width and then use panning? I wonder if you can kind of do.
Yeah, you could. Neither way is perfect. The way that I like to use is more like I use the mid-side module to bring stuff smaller, and then you can then sort of move them around. And I guess the other thing that is good about that is you can then, if you have an image that's narrower, then you can place it. Because if you're using Utility, then you can just bring it in, and then you use the balance to. Well, but you're still then just doing that again. You're never getting that much of this one over on that side.
Maybe you have to like copy the channel, literally duplicate the channel and do it that way.
Yeah.
Interesting. Are there any modules from other manufacturers that you're particularly struck by, impressed by in terms of their approach and what they offered? Are there anything that was kind of mind-blowing to you?
Let me see. I should look over here because this is probably where... Oh, that new silhouette, the...
Mannequins.
Mannequins, yeah. That is very cool. I was chatting with Trent at Superbooth last year. The thing that I particularly like about that is he's using like a... I can't remember what they're called. There's these pots that you can get now that can spin a full 360.
Right.
So you can use them like a rotary encoder, but it's actually got two resistive elements inside it. And so as you turn them around, it's like you've got the amount of up and down changing on one and the amount of side to side on another.
Yeah, I see.
And so you can do a full kind of 360 pan.
And they can just wheel indefinitely.
Yeah.
And they're just raising and lowering, two values. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the outputs, you get like a sine and cosine kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just trying to work out how do I draw that?
Yeah, interesting. And what does it do?
It's like a what's that interpolating scanner kind of thing? I think it was originally a Buchla thing, but then the Make Noise Rix Mix did a similar thing where you have a number of inputs and as you move a voltage along, it fades one in and then in and out kind of thing.
Yeah.
But being able to do it in a 360 thing with a knob that just keeps going around is great because those sorts of things when you're turning from like one end to the other and then you get to the end and then it's like, oh, got to go back again.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It just continues an interesting pattern.
Yeah.
Forever and ever and ever. Yeah, they do seem to have just such an interesting and clever approach to design. I've made no secret, I don't love the art poetry that goes with the description of the modules because for the reason it is kryptonite to me because my job is to try and explain things and make things clear. And And I
But
see someone who
that's
has
giving you an employment opportunity.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. No, it does. I suppose I should not encourage them, but I do encourage them because I do. But I think it's interesting. Everyone, despite the presence of me making videos, people still want to read manuals. And as I look recently, I was using this Google Notebook thing. You can also use AI to help you sift through data and pull out bits from manuals and reinterpret them in useful ways. The point is everyone learns in different ways. And I suppose I want for there to be a manual that is readable. To be fair to them, they have actually done that recently. In the last couple of years, they made technical maps.
The technical maps, yeah.
Which are quote unquote normal manuals. But it is the word anathema. It is basically kryptonite to a person. It's like your job should be as a manufacturer to make things clear so that people know whether or not the thing is a thing they want to buy. As you personally, you would have had that option, presumably, to say, I could cryptically describe what I do, or I could just make it understandable so that people know whether that's actually something that they want.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I got a couple of mangroves and assisters. I think that's... Oh, I got a cold Mac somewhere as well. And yeah, the cold Mac definitely needs a proper manual.
Yeah, cold Mac's just like one of those self-patching kind of super clever types of things that definitely benefits from explanation. Seems to be able to do almost everything, in terms of signal combination and, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I just think life is short. Where, especially as you get into your 40s, you're like, I've got kids, I don't have a lot of time. I need to know whether this thing clearly is something that is going to help me or hinder me. And so I don't want to put myself out of a job, but it would be my recommendation that manufacturers consider helping people understand why your product is useful so that when they know whether they want it and when they get it, they know what to do with it. But of course, as we've discussed, that there's no guarantees because we may well be like, wow, boys, I've invented the left right panning knob. There you go. And people may not yet understand the applications for it. But mid and side is not the same thing as left, mid, right, is it?
No.
It's not.
No.
I don't really understand what has to happen to encode mid-side, but clearly not that.
Well, yeah. I mean, the mid-side is just, you've got a stereo signal and normally you just have it as left and right. And yeah, mid-side's like just doing a little bit of maths to it. You can change the format of something to make it easier to work with for a different application, and then you can change it back. Yeah, that's all mid-side is. So you get the left and the right and you add them together. You can do it with a mixer. The first time I did mid-side, I was just using a matrix mixer before I built the module. Left and right, sum together, and then reduce the volume by 6 dB, to make the level the same.
Okay.
Because when you add two together, you end up... Yeah, a boost. Yeah. And then left mixed in with the out of phase right. So if you're doing it on a normal mixing desk, you hit the phase button and then sum them together. Because you're adding the out of phase version of it, anything that's panned to the middle is equal in the left and the right, so it will phase cancel. So then you end up with just the things that aren't the middle. So mid-side is kind of not completely accurate. It should be it's sum and difference. Sometimes people think that something will disappear from the mid as you pan it more towards the side, but it doesn't. It stays in the middle all the time.
Okay.
Mid is everything and side is the differences between left and right.
Okay. I understand perfectly. I've got it. I'm going to go do that on my Mackie right now.
Yeah. I've been explaining mid-side for 10 years now to everybody.
Yeah. Which is unfortunately a testament that people still are not getting it. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't got a snappy way of making everybody understand it yet.
No, exactly. But that sounds like the correct way. So I suppose then, do you have a kind of vision for where you're going to go? How do you think about your the stuff you make? Or are you just kind of do you need to keep releasing modules to stay afloat? And I suppose I'm curious about how you see yourself going forward.
I've got a lot of stuff that I've been working on. The way that I tend to work is I'll have an idea and I've got these notebooks that I just carry around with me everywhere, and I'll just write the idea down, sometimes I'll go back and read through things, and I've got whiteboards to remind me to, look up that thing. And sometimes I'll like have an idea and, I'll work on it a bit, and then it just sort of sits for a year or two. And then I'll come back to it and realize, because sometimes things just work out straight away. Like the soundstage was pretty, I don't think I changed anything from the first prototype I did of that. Right. Like, it just kind of worked. But sometimes things are not quite right, and then I'll be in the shower and be like, oh wait, I need to change this bit, and So but basically what I'm saying is I've got a lot of stuff that is in various stages towards completion. Yeah.
You're always basically percolating.
Yeah.
And sounds like you also know what you need to do to get them finished, right?
Yeah.
Or are there problems that are insurmountable or things that you yet to solve?
Well, there was one thing a prototype that I did for a module a little while ago, not to give away too many secrets, but I worked out how to do something in the analog domain that other people haven't worked out. Well, one person has worked out how to do, and I worked out a different way of doing it. And then, I made this module, and I was like, cool, this is going to be great. And then I built it, and I was like, okay, cool. Well, that whole section there needs to go. That is not as useful as I thought it would be. I need to change this. I'm going to move stuff from that side to this side. Hang on a second. This is not a module anymore. This is probably a desktop synth.
Right.
So, sometimes it's like that. And then sometimes it's like, oh, this is cool. Send it to the factory.
What is the future of music technology?
I think I've been thinking about this a little bit because I know that this is your little...
it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah. And I was thinking about, like, before when I was saying about you need to just leave instruments around for kids to play with, because that's where all of the, all of the cool analog stuff has come from people buying 303s when they were giving them away if you bought a JC120.
Yeah.
And, guitars sitting around people's houses, and like then a kid's like, oh, I can play the 3 chords on this, I'm going to start a band. I think the problem now is with so much music creating stuff is software now, and it's moving towards subscription models. There's not going to be software sitting around, like you're never going to come across your dad's old Roland Cloud subscription.
Yes, that is true.
And probably like cracked Fruity Loops is the folk instrument of the 21st century. Like cracked Fruity Loops on your parents' old work computer that they don't need anymore. I don't know. Yeah, I think that's the future. It's whatever the future is, it's going to be something that's just laying around that kids find and make some cool music with.
That's a great answer. I'm into that. Thank you.
Yeah.
That is, without a doubt, my favourite answer I think I have heard to date to that question. You're never going to come across your dad's Roland Cloud subscription is a shockingly poignant and incredibly true statement. But cracked Fruity Loops is the folk instrument of the 21st century. That is very true and insightful. Say what you want about piracy. I'm sorry to say, if we believe the future of music is young people doing illegal things with music, and by which I don't just mean, getting a cracked copy. I mean that they get a cracked copy and they don't know what they're supposed to be doing with it, and so they inadvertently create something new. Well, what has to happen for that to happen is that they have to have access. Access is the thing. And I'm sure I've talked about it on here before. It was true of me. My brother had an MC303, and because I had access to that MC303, it was the first thing I could get my hands on. And getting my hands on that thing made me go, oh, I want to do this more. So if there isn't something to get your hands on, we have a problem. And so, yeah, I mean, how many people listening to this have gotten their start on a cracked copy of Fruity Loops? I had a cracked copy of Fruity Loops at one point. I had a cracked copy of Ableton Live at one point. That was my major, and that's when I got into it. And then I remember buying my first copy because I was a student. And just to say, if you are a young person listening to this, I can tell you what I didn't know for a good while was that if you're a student, if you're in school, or if you're at university, then you have access to low-cost versions of software. That's the best discount that they possibly do is for you, a student. So if you can scare up the money, know now that this is the cheapest possible, right now is the cheapest possible time for you to buy software. You can get stuff really, really like with a significant discount. I reflect with some extreme level of bizarreness that I recently made a video for Ableton. Two, in fact. One explaining a technique that I discovered as a way to chop up jams more easily in the live timeline, and also a video on Push 3, both for Ableton. Despite my shockingly illegal beginnings, which I hope they don't mind, I think is quite a common thing. But the reality was, it was true that the piracy brought me in. It was the free demo that pulled me into working with the software, and I did pay for it later. Later, however, I ended up working in the music technology industry as an extremely roundabout way to get a free copy legally in the form of an NFR. You simply devote your entire working life to music technology, and you too can avoid spending £249 or whatever it was at the time for a copy of Live. Seems like a fair trade. Anyway, the point is you've just got to have access. You've got to get the thing. So, amazing answer. Thank you, Morgan, for your time and making it very interesting and amazing things. Of course, Morgan is wrong, spelt wrong. His new module is the Quiver, by the way, which came out after we were talking. And that's what he was referring to, the thing, the new thing. But Quiver is like an amazing patch programmable, do everything, big Fieldo jacks. He has mixers. He has obviously like stereo filters and stereo VCOs, and then his mid-side stuff. If you're at the slightest bit interested in the possibilities of mid-side and kind of ways to work with stereo in modular, you ought to be checking out his stuff. And of course, his soundstage, this insane thing where, you have a sort of a grid of jacks that correspond to the soundstage of sound. And you can just plug your hi-hats into the top right or, top middle, and you can plug a kick drum into the bottom at the middle, and it will mix things in a logical way in stereo, with high passes and low passes applied. Very cool. I wish I had something like that in my live system. But I don't have space for it. So yeah, check out his stuff. Morgan is ace. If you enjoyed this, please consider sponsoring on Patreon. Patreon, for the cost of a coffee a month, can help support the production of new bleeps. As you can tell, I am still very slow in getting these things to come out in a regular basis. But I still have many more bleeps queued up. So if you can, go on patreon.com/MiloMelodies or leave a review on the Apple podcast app or whatever you listen on. Reviews help enormously because they help push the podcast so that more people hear it. Leave a comment with your thoughts, and we'll see you very soon. May your stereo be glorious. Bye.